वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्. Okay, so chapter 2, we are on chapter 2 and we are still continuing with verse 38. Sukha dukhe same krutva, sukha dukhe same krutva, labha labhau jaya jayau, labha labhau jaya jayau, tato yuddhaya yujyasva, tato yuddhaya yujyasva, naivam papamavapsyasi, naivam papamavapsyasi. Treating alike victory and defeat, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, and engage yourself in battle. Fighting thus, you will incur no sin. Equanimity, equal, whether it's pain or pleasure, victory, defeat, gain, loss. That's what Bhagavan is saying. And the same, these words will be exploring little more, especially this 8 verses from 31st to 38, when Swamiji has described it and explained it very nicely. In the beginning, Bhagavan has told the positive, in middle, little negative, towards the end, again positive. We'll see this now. So in this session of 8 verses from 31st 38, Bhagavan Sri Krishna has disclosed several feelings, okay, and all different. A. While delivering a discourse of explaining a subject, the beginning should deal with positive aspect, the middle with negative aspect, and again the conclusion should again deal with positive aspect. In this context, Bhagavan Sri Krishna also in 31st and 32nd, okay, explains the favorable consequences of discharging one's duty. What Bhagavan says in 31st verse, Swadharmam api chavekshya na vikampitum arhase dharmyadi yudrachreyam anyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. What Bhagavan says, besides considering your duty as a warrior, you should not waver. Indeed, for a warrior, there is no better engagement than fighting for upholding of righteousness, upholding of dharma. So that's Bhagavan has explained to Arjuna in verse 31st. In 32, yadarchaya chopapannam swargadvaram apavrutam sukhinah kshatriyah partha labhante yodhamitrasham. Bhagavan says, O Parth, O Arjun, happy are the warriors to whom such opportunities to defend righteousness and come unsought. opening for them the stairway to the celestial abodes. So, this to us, as we discussed earlier, is a positive aspect. Now, from 33, in the middle, 33 to 36, Bhagavan explains the adverse effect or the adverse consequences of not performing the duty. In 33rd verse, Bhagavan says, Atha chetattvamivam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tatah swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. Bhagavan says, if, however, you refuse to fight this righteous war, underline the word righteous war. He has not put only the war, righteous war. Okay? Abandoning your social duty and reputation, you will certainly incur sin. Bhagavan has told very clearly. If you withdraw yourself, then you are looking for sin. That's a trouble, you can say. And in the next verse again, about the adverse consequences, akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtir maranad atirichyate. Bhagavan says, people will speak of you as a coward and a deserter. For a respectable person, infamy is worse than death. Akirtir maranad atirichyate. In fact, our scripture has told, kirtim palaya, protect your name and fame. Here, if you don't fight, Bhagavan says, what's going to happen? Infamy is worse than the death. People will start talking about you. That the person who has escaped, who ran away from the war, from the duty. Again, in next verse, the 35th, Bhagavan says, Bhayat ranadu pardam mansyante tvam maharathaha yeshancha bahumato bhutva yasyasi laghavam. The great generals who hold you in high esteem will think that you fled from battlefield out of fear. Bhayad ranadu pardaram, out of fear, and thus will lose their respect for you. Again, in next verse, 36, Bhagavan says more about it. Avachyavadanscha bahun vadishyanti tavahitaha nindantas tava samarthyam tato dukkataram nukim. Bhagavan Krishna says, your enemies will defame and humiliate you with unkind words, nindantavan tava samarthyam, disparaging you might. Alas, what could be more painful than that? So in these 4 verses, Bhagavan told about what's going to happen, negative aspect, that if you withdraw yourself, if you run away from your righteous war. And in concluding next 2 verses, 37 and 38, explaining the favorable consequences of discharging the duty and orders Arjun to act accordingly. Hatova prapyasi swargam jitva va bhokshasi mahim tasmat uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krutanishchaya. Bhagavan says, if you fight, you will either be slain on the battlefield and go to celestial abodes, or you will gain victory and enjoy the kingdom of earth. Therefore, arise with determination, O son of Kunti, and be prepared for fight. Hatova prapsyasi sarvagams. Swarga, heaven. If you die, you still get to heaven. And if you win, you will be ruling. And next verse, Sukhadukhe samekrutva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Fight for the sake of duty, treating alike happiness and distress, loss and gain, victory, defeat. Fulfilling your responsibility in this way, you will never incur sin. This is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. What Bhagavan is saying, fight. And still, simultaneously Bhagavan says, you will never incur the sin. That is the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita. So, in this verse, Bhagavan has also clarified the doubts arising in the mind of Arjun in the previous chapter. Okay. For an example, in the first chapter, for verse 31, Arjuna says, I don't foresee any good ensuing from the slaughter of kinsmen. Nimittani cha patsyami viparitani keshava nacha sreyamanupashyami hatva swajanamahave. That was Arjuna's argument. I don't foresee any good ensuing from the slaughter of kinsmen. And here, in the 31st verse, Bhagavan replied, there is nothing more welcome to a man of the warrior class than the righteous war. The previous chapter, Arjuna's doubt or the argument was in 37th verse, chapter 1, in last chapter. Arjuna says, how can we by killing our kinsmen be happy? That was his argument. Tasman narahawayam hantum dharta rashtrasya bandhavan swajanam hi katham hatva sukhina shyama madhavaha. By killing our kinsmen be happy. Bhagavan answered here in 32nd verse of this chapter, chapter 2. The doubt was, or the argument was in chapter 1. Here, Bhagavan has answered. Happy are the Kshatriya. Kshatriya means warrior class. Happy are the Kshatriya who get the opportunity of waging such an unsolicited warfare. Again, in chapter 1, Arjuna has raised the concern in verse 44. Arjuna says the consequences of the war will lead to hell. Utsanna kuladharmana manusyanam janadana narake niyatam vaso bhavati tenusasrama. In this chapter, Bhagavan has answered, the war is an open gateway to heaven. Again, in previous chapter, Arjuna has raised the concern in 36th verse. Sin alone will accrue to us by waging the war and by slaying them In the 33rd verse of this chapter, Bhagavan has answered, or Bhagavan has cleared the doubt. If you do not wage such a righteous war and abandon your duty, you will incur sin. Again, let's go to chapter 1 and verse 40. Arjun's doubt or the argument was, the result of the war will be impiety, will take hold of the entire family. And Bhagavan answered in this chapter, in the verse 33, if you do not wage such a righteous war, you will abandon your duty, righteousness. Okay. So, I mean, when you get time, just read this again, and then you will have the better understanding. In the same chapter 2, the verse 5, Arjuna insists and says, it is better to live on alms than to wage war. Therefore, Bhagavan Krishna says in this 38th verse, order him to wage war. Uddhav had a desire to live with Bhagavan Sri Krishna. That's in Bhagavad, okay? Right? Here Swamiji is giving the example of Uddhav. Uddhav was a good friend, you can say, of Bhagavan Krishna. Had a desire to live with Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So Bhagavan Sri Krishna directed him to go to the northern mountains and do penance there. It means that desire of any type is an obstacle to salvation. Even though Uddhav wanted to be with Bhagavan Krishna. That has mentioned in Canto 11 of Bhagavad in 29th verse and 29th chapter and 41st verse. In these verses, Bhagavan Sri Krishna has explained in detail some of the things which were referred to in brief. In the second and third verse of this chapter, for an example, earlier the expression Anarya Ajustam, it is shunned by noble souls, was used. Here the expression Dharmadi Yuddhatshrim Anyat Kshatriyasa, any other thing more welcome than a righteous war, has been used. There's the term Aswargyam. Swarga means heaven, not leading to heaven, was used here. The expression Swargadvaram Apayatam, an open gateway to heaven. That has been used by Bhagavan. Then the words Akirtim, not bringing fame, was used. And the expression is Akirtim chapi bhutani kshatriyat syansi tevyayam. All creature will even recount your undying infamy, has been used. There, Bhagavan Sri Krishna ordered Arjuna to fight by using the expression. What did he say? Tyaktvottishta parantapa. And here also Bhagavan has mentioned, he orders him, Tato yuddhaya yujyasva. Basically, as since the beginning, Bhagavan really wanted Arjuna to engage himself for the war. Again, the righteous war. That is his duty. That is his duty as a Kshatriya, as a from warrior class. He cannot run away from the war. It is the righteous war. Swamiji has explained here, the Gita teaches the remarkable art of spiritual upliftment through one's own dealings, so that a person, under all circumstances, having all kinds of dealings sanctioned by the scriptures, may attain salvation. Not that only you only meditate or you do the penance and then only you will be qualified for the salvation or for the moksha or the liberation. As you will see that generally other scriptures mention that if you want to attain salvation, become outsider, witness, by renouncing mundane material or the physical world and live in solitude, because the mundane affairs and spiritual upliftment can't go together. That's a different thought of school. But here in our Bhagavad Gita, that as I am saying you, as I said earlier, that is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. But the Gita declares that at whatever place you are, whatever sect you follow, whatever principle you live up to, whatever religion or school of thought, or the caste, or the stage of life you follow, by following them, you act according to the gospel of the Gita. It will lead you to salvation. That's look at this. Bhagwan has made so easy. But if still we don't want to do anything, we still don't want to put our effort, then nobody can help us. The supreme truth which recluses and saints attain in solitude by practicing spiritual discipline for years together will be attained in practical worldly life by following the teaching or by the message of Bhagavad Gita, by becoming even-minded in success and failure. That is the basic principle, even-minded. Okay. Loss or gain, success or failure, defeat or victory, performance of one's duty without the desire of fruit. This is in the same chapter it will come. Karmaneva adhikaraste. It's I think 47th verse. Yeah. So without the desire for fruit is to act according to the gospel of Bhagavad Gita. Doesn't matter what situation you have, what time is there, as long as you have developed that. When I say you, we, as long as we have developed that quality by becoming even-minded. Success, failure, loss, gain, defeat, victory is coming, going. These are all transient. They are not eternal, transient. So that's the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. What can be more terrible circumstances and activity than a war? Yeah, let's see. When a man can attain salvation under such a terrible circumstances and activity as a war, then what other more terrible circumstances and activity will be there in which he may not attain salvation? Arjun, by waging the war, if he is qualified for the salvation, then we just have to do our duty. We just have to perform our duty. According to the Gita, sitting on a seat in loneliness and meditating on God can lead to salvation. And waging a war can also lead to salvation. Meditating on God, that is coming in chapter 6. So Arjun wanted neither heaven nor kingdom. He wanted to run away from the sin which would accrue by killing his kith and kin. Therefore, Bhagwan Krishna appears to say, if you don't covet heaven and kingdom and want to run away from the sin, Discharge your duty of fighting in the war, treating the agreeable and disagreeable alike. Thus, you will incur no sin. Naivam papam avapsyasi. The reason is that sin is not incurred by waging war, but uneven-mindedness, partiality, desire, selfishness, and ego are the causes of sin. Underline this sentence. Desire, selfishness, and ego are the causes of sin. It is your duty, it is your dharma to wage war. Sin is incurred by not performing one's duty and by doing which should not be done. In the preceding verse, Bhagavan Krishna seemed to say to Arjuna, if you want to gain kingdom and heaven, it is proper for you to perform your duty. While in this verse, he seems to say, if you don't want to gain kingdom and heaven, it is proper for you to discharge your duty by being even-minded. It means that it is improper not to discharge one's duty under any circumstances. Now in the next two verses, Bhagavan authorizes Arjuna to be guided by even-mindedness, already mentioned into presenting verse, and he describes its glory. So, that was verse 38, okay? And today's explanation, whatever you like, whatever you enjoy, the credit goes to all the scripture or the saint or the great man. And as you know that our main reference book is Sadhak Sanjivini from Swami Ram Sukdas Ji. So absolutely nothing belongs to me. We will be reciting the 73rd verse of 18th chapter. Okay. Nashto moha smrutirlabdha tat prasadan mayachyuta Sthitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava.